Started. I will, once again, I would do my best to keep us within our 60-minute time limit, Penny. I would do my very best if possible.
Well, you're fortunate because the Steeler game just ended, or I might have been a smidge too late to give you the whole hour.
That's okay. That's okay. So, but here's the question: since you have your Steeler gear on, what was the outcome of the game? Spoiler
Uh,
alert for those who may have recorded the game.
oh, I don't want to sour any Atlanta fans day, but they didn't finish the job, so we took home the W.
There it is. There it is. Hey, you got to finish the job, man. You got to finish the game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Off the toe of our kicker. For anybody that has Chris Boswell on their fantasy team where they don't get any prizes, of course.
of course.
You can't gamble on that
You
football
know.
since it's an NCAA sport. But yeah, he put up 18 off his toe. So that's
Oh,
pretty good day if you had Chris Boswell as your kicker.
oh, wow. Wow. Anyone who did, congratulations. Hmm. Well, here at the beginning, once again, if you see me staring off into space, it's probably because I'm still admitting individuals to the meeting, but I'll try to multitask and try to make this as smooth as possible. So first of all, I want to take this opportunity to, first of all, Penny, thank you. Thank you for making the effort and the time to join us today. I mean, I think this is outstanding. For those of you who may be living under a rock and may not know, our special guest for today is Penny Davis, who is the NCAA coordinator of women's basketball officials. And by the way, she did work for 22 years. She put some work in on the floor. I think you might have a couple people have maybe a couple of questions about that actually at the same time. So without any further ado, let me introduce Penny Davis to the group.
Hey everybody, thanks for having me. And just want to say thanks to Wayne and all the people involved with L3 and inviting me to do this. I think it's great. You guys are putting in the work in the off season, so to speak. Not that there's ever an off season, but this stuff is meaningful. You can get a few nuggets, I think, that can help you throughout your journey in officiating. And that's why I'm committing my 1 hour of my Sunday before the season actually begins to answer some questions. So let's make it worthwhile and let's have some fun.
Excellent, excellent. I'm going to start with the first question from someone who could not join us today. Blanca Burns, she submitted a question for you. And of course, I think she might be running up and down the court right now. But her question, here's her question. It says, what are your top three expectations that you look for in a referee when selecting them for the NCAA tournament?
Well, as much as I would like to have a free list of people, I mean, you have to be on that list. So, that goes without saying. So it's being eligible as one thing. And then the second part of that is literally being nominated by your conference. So, the things that it takes to one, be eligible. Think we all know that it's passing the test, it's attending a clinic if you're Division 1, it is doing all the little things within the season that we ask for, whether it's taking the quizzes in a timely fashion or watching all the videos, whatever it is administratively that you're asked to do. I would suggest doing that as quickly as possible. Most of the people that put deadlines on things, the deadline is their last day that they could possibly take it and still do what they need to do with it. So if you can get those things done, I mean, you don't want to be on a list of people that, it's 5 days before the deadline and the deadline still hasn't come, so you feel like you have time. Don't be on that list of people who still haven't completed it, because if you are that repetitively, I think you're sending a message that things aren't as important, or um, people could take what they want from it. But if you are the first person that returns their paperwork, the first person that returns whatever is being asked for, I'll tell you, that's meaningful and that is noted. So I mean, really take heed to those tasks and build that as a pride point for yourself, and how accurately and efficiently you return those things. I mean, don't turn it in incomplete or that you didn't read it just to be first, but give it its due diligence. But it's so meaningful and it takes a lot of weight off of whoever's on the other end of that. And then also it's meaningful not to be on that list of still have not completed. So for what that's worth, that's a big piece. The second piece is, your in-game performance, what you do in high pressure moments. That's extremely meaningful, and it may not be the thing that gets you in the tournament, but if you are somebody when, it's a critical moment and you rise to the occasion, that's a beautiful thing. And, if your games aren't the games that are screwed up, and we know the ones we see that have something at the end or something in the middle, it's just like, it doesn't have a good feeling, that doesn't help you. You want to be someone whose games aren't messed up, somebody who does all the right things. And then the other thing that really stands out for me is if there's a high pressure moment and you are willing to do the tough thing, whether it's calling the offensive foul on the best player in the game because they clearly pushed off and your accuracy is 100%, but it's not popular, but your accuracy is 100%. And we saw moments like that in the tournament where people had opportunities to shine, whether it was an obvious fifth foul and maybe they didn't blow the whistle, or you know what, it is a gamer kind of play, but the obvious decision is that this is an illegal screen and we're going to call that and we're going to be right on and we can support you in that decision. So I think those three things are the biggest for me. Just steady performances and then having the courage late in the game or in any point in the game to do the things that you're asked to do.
That's excellent. That is really, really good advice. And you're right. There are some consistencies in what we do, how we discuss it. I find it amazing when we can have discussions with a variety of different individuals across the spectrum of officiating, and you notice the consistencies, right? Because they're truths, they're there, and also those indicators that's what works, and that's something we should pay attention to. All right, I'm going to see if Tanner Gray is available to ask one of his questions this morning, as if he's not wrangling with his little daughter.
I see his name's there, so he must be listening.
I'm wrangling with daughter, nieces, nephews. I'm wrangling everybody today. Hi. So I had a question. It pertains to the WBIT. Let me pull it up. I want to ask it correctly because it's about the selection process of the WBIT. Are the officials selected the same way in the WBIT as the NCAA tournament?
Yeah, they actually are. So what happens with our pool of officials for the WBIT is same thing. You have to be eligible. You have to be nominated for the tournament. And we take all the people that were nominated, which I think was in total around 250, if I'm not mistaken. Of those 250, we pick 116 to work the NCAA tournament. Those people, depending upon their assignments, are still eligible to work WBIT before and after their NCAA games, as long as it's not the day before. But same criteria. You have to be nominated and you have to be eligible. So that includes the minimum number of games. So there are a few people that actually got nominated by coordinators that would have been in the eligible pool, but they hadn't met the criteria for 25 college games, 20 of those being Division I. So, I've encouraged folks during the clinics to do what they can to make sure they meet that threshold for being eligible, because it's could be the difference between getting a postseason assignment or not.
Thank you.
All right,
Welcome.
good. All right, so I'm going to ask a question for Nicole Brandon. She's in a vehicle driving right now, so she's not able to. We're not going to talk and drive at the same time or watch video. So I'm going to ask a question on her behalf.
All right.
Her question is, what advice would you recommend for younger officials who are assigned a game with a veteran official that will make the situation easier for them?
Well, I think one, that's a great opportunity. So you should absolutely want that that chance to work with that veteran, and how you make the most of that, which I think really is that conversation. One is you be as solid as you can be in your role and responsibility. So if you're the U2 or the U1, throw as many strikes as you can throw within the game. When you're in the pregame, I think being available to ask questions. If sometimes those locker room conversations can be a little challenging where, you know, you're the young, eager one, and it's now their 5th game in a row, and it's your second game of the week. Maybe they're not as enthused to have that pregame. And I think, you know, just being prepared to say, hey, you know what, can you look at this play? I got a couple of questions for you. And just, you know, show a play on your iPad or whatever device you have and start that conversation and demonstrate that you're a student of the game and demonstrate that you are trying to learn and you recognize you don't know everything. And I think that's sometimes the hardest thing for a young official is, man, you know what you know, and you know that to the end, and you might be faster, you might have more athletic gifts in that moment than that veteran, but the reps that they have and the trust and rapport that they have with the coaches and the coordinator, you can't match that. You can't hold a candle to that. So what you want to do is to just demonstrate that you are somebody who's going to be a good partner. And, you know, it's the little things. If your crew chief doesn't always have to be the one to recognize that you're in the bonus. Maybe it's you that recognizes, oh, wow, you know, hey, we're going to media, and you help them remember that. So it's a smooth transition from the foul they called to their timeout. And you do it in a helping mode versus a, oh, I got this instead of you mode. I think that's meaningful. When we're dealing with some of the age demographics, I think sometimes some of the things that the current generation does miffs the old guard sometimes. So, you know, if they're not on their phone, I wouldn't be on my phone. You know, I would try to find a way to mirror some of their behaviors so that, you know, you totally, you know, try and fit into their world and, you know, have meaningful conversations, like find out some things about them, learn about their families. That stuff really does go a long way in building rapport, especially amongst your colleagues. So there's a handful of things I would suggest.
I'm in total agreement with you, 100%. Let's see, Faye, are you on the call? Would you like to pose your question, please?
Hi, Penny.
Hi, Faye. I resisted all of the Mueller things in that pause. So good to see
Yes.
you.
My question is it possible to release dates to the NCAA Academy to make it more economically feasible for individuals that live out west? Because in the last 2 years, you've had it out east and released them pretty late. And I just want to say, go Broncos.
We'll see how those Broncos do next week. So I would hope that we would be able to release that information on a faster timeline. Unfortunately, the academy and its planning with all of the dynamics that go into it, because for those that don't know, the NCAA actually runs the academy. They recruit the players and the teams to come, so it is their event. And the officiating thing is just a little side aspect of it, which really happy about. I think it's a great training opportunity. So if you do get a chance to apply for that in the future, I would suggest that you do that. I think we hit the ball out of the park, so to speak, when it comes to what we were able to do this last year with our education platform. But we'll try and be as cognizant about that. And I know the turnaround with regards to, you know, us dealing with the tournament and some of the other responsibilities we have. There are factors. It's not that somebody's sitting on these lists and not doing things. It's things do take time, but we'll try and be as cognizant of that. And I would love if they would get us a more central or western location to make that a little more equitable for those participating. So we're getting a little thunderstorm here. You're hearing a horn from the golf course that we live. Our house backs up to, so it's
Okay.
not my house.
Hey, good. Hey, as long as they get off the course, tell them all
Yeah.
get off the course.
We had to do that yesterday. We were hoofing it back pretty quick.
All right, TC has joined us. TC, would you like to pose your questions to Penny, please?
Hi, Sugi. You want to unmute your mic?
Sorry. Hi, Penny.
Hi. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Hey, my question is, you were so young when you transitioned from an official to, your current role of coordinator of officials. So I'm just wondering what prompted the change, and do you still miss being on the court?
Well, one, thank you for the question and the way you posed it, because if anyone that still wants to call me young in this role, I'll take that compliment. Yeah, it was a hard decision, because my officiating career wasn't done, but I do know that the history of this role essentially is that this job doesn't come open that often. And I did aspire for the opportunity to be in this type of role. But down the road was my mindset. And at the time I had that particular season, the 2018-2019 season, I was dealing with an injury in my hip, and I'd had some issues with my knee in the past. So I kind of knew there was an expiration date on what my joints and my body was going to allow me to do from a longevity standpoint. So with all of that information, I'm like, well, and I was encouraged to apply by a couple of people. So I took all those signs from the universe and said, hey, if this is meant to be, then I'll get the job. And if it's not, then I won't, and we'll keep officiating, and I'll be happy doing it. So it was kind of a time and opportunity decision, but also, factoring in, what is my future down the line with some of the things I had going against me. But yes, I absolutely miss officiating. I miss the relationships that you generate as a referee. I miss being on the floor. And frankly, that job is a lot easier than the job that I have now. So I'll dream about times past pretty often, but there's really no going back at this stage.
Thank you. And we know you are doing a really great job as a coordinator. So
Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Yes, I did. I will agree with that. I do that 100%, 100%. I'm just kind of curious. Do you have challenges working with the other coordinators at the NCAA level when it comes to scheduling, selecting officials, working with them, especially when it comes down to the end of the season?
I think during the end of the season, it's a different dynamic, because that's the phase and the time where, what the NCAA does, which is run championships. Now the essentially the decisions and the I don't like to say the word power, but the power and control really lies with the NCAA and with the committee that's in charge of women's basketball, the tournament. So it's an interesting dynamic, because I know as an official, there are challenges with dealing with multiple coordinators and navigating through those relationships. And, it's not really different in the court in this space as a national coordinator, because, I'm not responsible for them. I don't hire them. I don't fire them. I don't tell them who they get to select to be on their staff or not. Who they put on their games, their conference tournament games. And so, it's a lot of, much like my relationship with the officials, I can encourage you to enforce the rules. I can educate you. I can try and guide you into the direction I think we should go. But you're still going to go do what you're going to do. And if your coordinator is telling you something slightly different, or, it translates different to you, then, there's a collision of opinion. So it's a lot of, I'll say, higher level administration and leadership in those relationships. And, I think we all have a lot to learn from each other, which is really valuable, because the coordinators that are in these roles, are very vast and very different and have different perspectives. And I think when, I feel like I'm in the middle sometimes, I can kind of glean information from a lot of different parties, and then, try and identify, well, here's the sweet spot, here's the middle road where maybe we can all live in a happy space. And it can be challenging, but it can be really rewarding too.
Thank you, Penny. I really appreciate your forthrightness and your honesty. That's really good. Shifting gears slightly, let's talk about rules for a second. I know this is probably your favorite topic.
It's not actually. I have a guy for that, so
There
I
you go.
to answer rules questions, and I am really careful when I am asked one to make sure that I do say the right thing, or I just say, hey, there's somebody we could talk to about that.
There it is. I'm the exact same way. Can you describe the process? We're touched on it slightly, the process that surrounds rule changes and how much input do officials have when it comes to the logistics of implementing new rules?
Yeah, I love that question because it kind of leans into something I've been trying to get officials to do. So the biggest place where officials can help with rule changes is one, enforcing what rules are out there. Because if there's a bad rule and we enforce that bad rule to the highest level, it's going to draw some attention to the point that people are going to say, you know what, that's a bad rule. We need to get rid of it. So that's probably the most impactful place. If there's a bad rule out there, and let me just throw out the random face guarding, since that hasn't been something that's necessarily been exposed, but a defender face guards a ball handler and puts their hand in their face. Who on this call knows the proper penalty by the rule book?
That is a great question.
Somebody unmute and tell me the answer, or all of you.
I know it's illegal, and so dang.
What's the penalty? Somebody give me the penalty.
Technical
Mitch?
foul.
I
Thank
thought
you.
it was a common foul, so yeah.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a technical foul. Now, how many of you on this call have actually called a technical foul when you've seen that? I'm glad there's crickets. If you were trying to unmute to say you had, let's just roll on being cool. But that's one of the rules. It's like it just doesn't fit. And if you were that official that said, hey, you know what? I'm gonna call this and I'm gonna prove the point, guess what? You're gonna be on YouTube for decades to come about you were the one that called that. Like that's a rule change that I think needs to happen. So in that the how we do that wouldn't be the one I would pick to enforce to its highest limit. What I would say is send that in and give your rationale of there's nobody in this world that's going in their right mind that is going to penalize this because they're going to get laughed out of the gym and maybe lose their job. But the proposal part is huge. And when more than one people submit that proposal, and it gets that attention, like, wow, this came in from 5 different officials, let's really talk about this. It will then be elevated to having a conversation in the rules committee. There is one official and one coordinator in the discussion about rules proposals. And the other piece that's really impactful is the survey. So when the rules survey comes out and the results show that, gosh, this proposal, 95% of the people feel that this should be adopted, like that's meaningful. And when they break it into the officials, the coaches from each of the levels, so they know who responded to what degree, but also how that group feels about that particular proposal and what to do with it. So those 2 things, the rule survey and submitting the proposals, are probably the 2 biggest things, in addition to referees enforcing the rules the way they're supposed to be enforced.
Good answer. And
I
just
have
go ahead.
Hi Penny, it's Faye again. I'm just curious, what is the rationale behind only submitting there's a lot of time at the end of the season when you can submit it. Why not when we encounter it during the season or whenever it may be? Why not have that open year round? Like, what is the thought behind that?
I actually think it is open year round, but I think they only announce that for a certain period. But to your point, like when I was a referee and I would encounter something like that, I would make a note, and I've got a note in my phone, rule changes to propose. And so I write it up then when I'm feeling most passionate about it. The other thing you can do is always write it up and send it to me or John saying, hey, I really think this should be something to be proposed. I don't see the form available just yet, but here it is. And a little pro tip, if you could ask John to help you write that in a way that will be received in the most productive way, that's so much more meaningful, because there are a few proposals that come in and it's not written in quite the right way where the real message comes through. It may not get as much attention as it should in that meeting.
Thank you.
Penny, that tidbit of advice right there is golden. That's really, really good advice. That's even something I hadn't considered. So yes, I would follow it. If you have an idea or an opinion on a rule that we're currently implementing or not implementing, and would like to see a change, yes, submit it to John. Ask for help in submitting it so that it is received in the right way. Let me check on
Copy
Peggy.
me on that stuff, because I don't mind seeing it, because if you've got a clip of the play and you send that to me in addition to your rationale, it's like, wow, look here, this play actually did happen, which I think is often really meaningful. That just adds weight to it. So when that conversation comes up, I can say, hey, and I'll put the play up on the screen for the whole committee to look at, and they can see the scenario in that situation. So I really advise kind of duplicating that, and don't think that's something we don't want to see. We both want to see that. We both want that information kind of be informed so we can get in front of things.
Excellent. That is excellent. Let me check on Peggy. She might be sitting in an airport somewhere. I hope not. Let me see if she's available.
I am sitting in the airport. Hello, everybody. I am sitting in the airport, not working, but vacation.
All right. What's your question?
Wayne, you took my question down. So let me remember what my question was. Being that we've had a year, maybe, I'm not sure if it's 2 years or a year of experiencing the faking being foul situations. How did this year go as far as your film review on that particular, those particular cases with the faking being foul situations? And do we foresee any changes going forward with the penalizing the faking being foul?
No, thanks for that question. I'll say overall, we were not very good at enforcing faking this year. And we expected growing pains with this rule. The rules committee, the way they implemented it with some really pretty good cushions ultimately. One, that it's a warning first, which the men used to have it as a warning first, and they just said, you know what, screw it, we're going to go straight to the technical foul. And adopting it in that fashion felt really harsh, without the reps of realizing, hey, this is what it is, this is what it isn't. Let's give the warning first and then follow through with a technical foul. They also put the cushion in that, it's not a player foul. So whatever team gets it, it's a team technical. It doesn't count as one of their personals towards disqualification. So, it's a pretty safe technical foul to give. We just got to get better at recognizing those situations. So no, there's no change for this coming year. I will say the rules committee was like, did we even have this rule? I never saw it being enforced. And I think part of that is they never see the live ball signal, so they don't realize that we have given the warning. So we're going to highlight that in our preseason training video, but also that we got to be better, and we got to be willing to assess the warning and assess the technical when it's there.
Penny, I think this is a topic that officials have talked about forever, for years, when it comes to faking, right? Everyone recognizes it and everyone has a different way of discussing it. but then we finally implemented a new rule. Do you think it's part of human nature that sometimes it's difficult to adopt something new that you may not be comfortable with at first? It may take us a while to, hopefully a short while, to adjust to the new rule and the signals.
Yeah, I think it's just has that newness to it, and people are reluctant, and it's not the newness of not shaking the coach's hand. We were all about, I don't want need to be over there and shake your hand and let you bend my ear about what the opponent's been doing all game. We were good on that, but we weren't good at adopting this and embracing it. And I think that's that's an aspect of the quality officials. Like, they're willing to do what's being asked, and it's our duty to enforce that. And the rules committee expects it, so we can't ignore it. And we will get better. I just think it takes a little time, and so we're being patient that people will get comfortable with it.
Good, good, good.
Thanks for that. I just to elaborate a little bit on it. It's because it's considered sort of like not a violation, but a violation in a sense, but that violation that doesn't require you to stop the clock, because it's a continuation of play and we don't know what the result of that is going to be. So we can't stop the play. So with the lead mainly making that call and you're away from coaches, maybe can be a mirroring of the mechanic from the person that's closest to the table, perhaps. I don't know, because we can't do it multiple times because it looks like you're asking the player to get up off the floor. So maybe down the line somewhere where there's some tweaking of the rule or the mechanic, maybe the person closest to the table can also mirror that mechanic.
Yeah, we discussed all of that at good lengths, and I think it's challenging to expect during live play that, whoever is nearest the table, they have other responsibilities and matchups that they're watching. They shouldn't be watching what the lead official is signaling, but they could have an awareness. It just probably wouldn't be all the time. But yeah, I think that we're going to learn a lot about how things are going after this coming season, now that we've lived with it for a year and trained on it for 2 years.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Another topic that has been discussed pretty prominently over the last several years, in this time of social media, which is so prominent in our culture, how do you think it can potentially help women's college basketball? And what about the perception of referees?
Yeah, I think it's a blessing and a curse. I mean, I think that social media has definitely contributed to the growth of the game and the growth of the popularity of the players, in addition to NIL and the transfer portal and the drama. And I think with officiating, it's something to be, just really mindful and thoughtful about. I'll say I know that our current generation, that's their lifeblood. Looking at, consuming, relating to people through social media. When I was coming up and officiating, the guidance from leadership was social media, don't do it. Don't be on Facebook. Don't be on anything. On MySpace, I'll date myself a little bit, but it was don't do it. And that was, essentially the guidance. And, I know that that's not a viable answer per se. I think that making sure your accounts are private, if you've got an alias that you're known by that you can use instead of your name that goes on the box score, I think that's really smart to kind of protect yourself from the casual fan who, all of a sudden just loves Annie McPlayer from whatever team, and now, you called the fifth foul and, you got a really unique name, Taylor Chiarelio. Like, I find that in the box score. I don't know how many of those Taylors are out there, but I bet there's not a ton. So you've got a unique name. That's why I picked that out. But and I'm sure I didn't say it the right way, but I could spell it based upon what I see in a box score. I can find you on Instagram or wherever and send you a DM if your account's not private. And now all of a sudden you get something that's, it's not coming from a positive source or a credible source, and you get to deal with that emotionally. And that's hard. I mean, I think we're all humans. We all have emotions, and that stuff hits us differently in each individually. I know in my role as national coordinator, I get some messages that pop up in my inbox. I'm like, I don't know that person. If I get that message in March, I've got somebody else that's going to read that message for me and let me know if, one, there's a threat or something related to gambling in there, or if it's something I can just throw in a folder and deal with later. So for me, that's my process. I would encourage everybody to have a process for when you get that thing. And if it is a threat, if it is something related to gambling, I would run that up the chain to your coordinators so that you are found to be in full disclosure, so that, one, if any of those parties ever come back and they try to lay anything on you that you were involved in gambling or anything else, you've got some protection as far as notifying the right people.
Yes, it's great advice. And I also know that since you are such a procure of fashion, do you have an opinion on the Lululemon pants that officials are starting to wear now?
I do, and I would just say, with caution, wear those. And, I have for decades felt that the polyester pants available to us, particularly women with different body shapes, and I was one of those that had a slightly different body shape. I spent more on tailoring than I did on the actual garment that I purchased, to get it to fit right and look professional. And I think those Lululemon pants fit nicely on some people. I don't think they fit nicely on everybody. So you want to make sure that you've got the body type to wear that pant, if you do choose it, but also know that some coordinators do not feel that same way. And for me, it's not something that I'm going to put a lot of weight into. If you're getting your plays right and then you got ugly pants, oh well. I'm glad you're getting your plays right and your game's not messed up. You can look like $1,000,000, but if your game's messed up and you're not getting your plays right, that's a whole different situation. So I think it's important to know who you're working for and what their preferences are. So I know some coordinators think that those are not the appropriate pants to wear. So there's some differences of opinion in that regard, but I really wish there were some nice quality garments to wear for officials in regards to pants, and that would get buy-in across the board. So I feel for everyone in that situation.
Along those same lines, this is something that has been on my mind for a long time, and I for the life of me, I don't understand why no one's ever decided to address it. Has there ever been any conversations with any of the manufacturers, clothing manufacturers, about creating a line of officiating gear specifically geared toward women?
I know I've had a couple of conversations along those lines, but I think we come in all shapes and sizes, so it's probably a tough market to really nail down perfectly. But I'm not in that space, so.
Yeah, if I had the ability, I think I would honestly take that on, because I think it would be really appreciated, and there's a market for it. There's a need for it. Okay, I'm going to open the floor up to any other additional questions we may have today. Oh, Taylor, huh? And I can't pronounce his name either.
Okay, that makes me feel better. Thanks, Wayne.
Go ahead, Taylor.
Can you hear me?
Gotcha.
Hey, yeah, it's pronounced Shirello, but that's okay. If I could count the amount of times in my life that somebody's pronounced it correctly, it would be being generous would be 1, and if I'm being honest, it's 0. So that's okay. That's good information to know. So as Wayne knows, and probably a lot of the people in the group know, I am a very new official. This will be my second full season as far as just being an official. Last year I worked about 15 or so so I'm still doing mostly high school varsity, and looking to eventually try to move into the collegiate ranks at some point. And so this is something that Wayne talks to me a lot about whenever I get to talk with him about not just being the best like women's official or the best, men's and women's in high school and stuff like that, but just being the best basketball official that I can be. So my question is, it kind of goes back to the play that we had discussed earlier with the illegal screen that had happened in the NCAA tournament. And so I don't even know if this is a question that can necessarily be answered logistically or like exactly, but as a new official, how do you guys as coordinators and as the higher ups, how do you guys kind of perceive and look at and address those kind of calls that can be so controversial? And the reason why I ask that is because as a new official, I hear so many different things from so many different people, whether it's veterans, coordinators, things that I hear from collegiate people, the things that I hear from high school people, like all the different stuff, right? How do we really address those plays where it's like, well, you hear the advantage, disadvantage, you hear call it by the rule book, call it by the environment of the game. What does the game need? Does the player, is it their fifth foul, kind of those kind of things. So can you kind of maybe just talk a little bit about how plays like that should be addressed and how we should process it in the moment as officials?
Yes, Taylor, really, really astute question for somebody of your experience level. So thank you for that. But I will say that probably the best advice I can give to you is that when you've got a play like that, it's an obvious play. You already know the outcome. I mean, and that's where you're having the mindset of, where are we at in the game? I know this is a game changer, whatever the call is on this, whether you call it, it's a game changer, whether you don't call it, it's a game changer. Because if the other player comes off that screen and they nail a three and now they're up by 2, as opposed to being down by 1, like that's a game changer too. You've decided that by not blowing your whistle versus blowing your whistle. So when you've got a play and it fits into the category of obvious, I believe that play fits into the category of obvious. We don't get a chance to mess with or make decisions over obvious plays. Obvious plays are simply that, obvious plays. And when you have the intestinal fortitude to blow your whistle on an obvious play that you only look at once on replay and you're like, yep, that's an illegal screen. And that's how I felt about that play. The people that you work for can support you and support that decision because it's obvious. Now, we're talking about plays that maybe are in the gray, where I'm not saying let's call a hand check at the very end of the game because you clearly saw that was a hand check. That's a difference between knowing that play had an impact, the illegal screen had an impact on the trailing defender. The hand check play didn't really have an impact where it technically may be right. It's harder to support in that moment because maybe we haven't been that great about calling those for the 40 minutes of the game. So I think there's a difference too between knowledge and wisdom. So when you're coming up as a young official, you've got a lot of knowledge. I read the rule book, I went to camp, I listened to all of the whole series of Sunday talks with a bunch of experts. I've got all this knowledge, but until November hits and you've got the opportunity to go and get those reps in and apply that knowledge, it's just that. So understanding between knowledge and wisdom, and I use that example of the face guarding. Did you know that rule about face guarding, that it's supposed to be a technical foul?
I want, well, so first of all, I mean, on the women's side, because like I said, I mostly work federation for high school.
It's a yes or no question, Taylor. Yes or no? Did you know that rule?
For women's, no, I did not. For
Okay.
high school, it was some sort of penalty to it, but they changed the rule in federation this year. So I'll just say no. I was not clear enough on it, so no.
Okay. So something for you to also learn how to answer the question.
Yeah.
What's the question? Is a yes or no? Answer the yes or no. And just sometimes I think people get so far into wanting to share what they have, it comes across in the wrong way as opposed to being open learning. So you're going to learn more by listening with the 2 ears you've got than with using your mouth to ask questions. So just a little tidbit for everybody on the call. That's super meaningful. But I think understanding the difference between someone who's got wisdom with, years and years of officiating. They've got the familiarity of the coaches. They're immediately going to have buy-in and rapport with them as opposed to somebody who's brand new. So we could have a veteran make a terrible mistake in a game, but I swear to God, they are like a Teflon toilet where anything you put down there, it just doesn't stick. And that was supposed to be a joke. So I thought maybe I'd get a smile or two out of somebody, but you know, when you're brand new, you're not made of Teflon yet. You know, you're that cast iron where everything sticks. So just learn that you know, there's lots of layers to the onion, and you don't know what you don't know yet, and there's so much more to come. But I commend you for having that awareness, but be patient with the learning process and the journey. And I look back when I was a young official, and I was super cute, super fit, perfect blonde ponytail. I could run faster than anybody, and my signals were sharp, but boy, I stunk up some games and not knowing what things to apply and whatnot. And, you know, you sometimes get stuck on being right, and it can delay your progress sometimes. So just be patient and do a lot of listening.
Thank you. Can I ask a follow-up real quick?
I'm good with that. Wayne, are you good with that?
Yeah, I'm good with it.
So, I don't know if this is necessarily applicable, because that helps a lot. Because I think the hard thing for me as a young official is definitely when I'm in games. Like, I was spending so much time in my rule book, and I say my rule book, my high school rule book, because that's what I've been encouraged to do until I obviously step into being on a staff for a collegiate conference or whatever. There's oftentimes people argue rules, and I know word for word what it is, and I just know. So that tends to happen. So whenever I have people that are, so to say, maybe whether they're evaluating or just watching, let's say Wayne is coming in and he's watching a game, and I'm using him as an example just because he's here. What kind of questions are good questions to ask as far as to ask how you can improve, I guess? Is it more so on a perceptual side? Is it more so, are you asking questions like what areas to really focus on so that you can like you said, kind of enjoy the process of being a young official, but also at the same time continue to grow and improve regardless of what stage in your officiating journey you're at?
I think I would leave some open-ended questions, whether it's, gosh, Wayne, you've refereed a long time, you know, what's the advice you would give to me? That's one way to pose it. If it's about the game that you just worked, like, hey, based upon what you just saw, could you give me 2 things that that you would suggest I work on? And just keep it really, really simple in that regard. And from your own discipline and learning perspective, you know, you might get 10 things that you're supposed to work on from a post game, but take 1 in the trail, 1 in the center, 1 for the lead, and then something for game management, and work on that your very next game. Don't try to take all 10 things, but if you take 1 for each position and then 1 thing for overall, that will help you. As a young official, if a lot of us played the game, we've been taught for decades to see the ball, see the ball, see the ball. It's really hard to break that habit when you're just starting. I still want to see the ball, and we need to have an awareness of it, but there's young officials that ball watch. So, you know, my advice to them would be find the matchup you're responsible for in your primary. Actually say those numbers out loud, because if you got to find those little numbers on some of those uniforms so you can say it out loud to yourself or say it in your head, it's going to create that discipline to learn to look in your primary and find your matchups. And, you know, lo and behold, you might find that illegal screen or that hold off ball of a cutter or something like that. So, you know, lean on the veterans for their experience. Hey, you know, what was your calling card? What were you good at, Wayne? You know, tell me a little bit about that aspect of the game. I'd like to learn more. And then just let them go, because they'll probably fill more of the air than you expected in a response, but you'll get some nuggets out of it.
Thank you. Cool. I appreciate it. Yeah, everything you said lined up with the stuff that Wayne tells me. So I appreciate it. Thank you so much. And nice to meet you.
Hey, good luck to you, Taylor.
Thank you so much.
Excellent. Good. Excellent question, Taylor. Penny, great advice. We have time for one more question. Sugi, do you have a follow-up question you'd like to pose to Penny?
Sure. Well, we're talking about those up and down, we're learning stuff as an official. So, do you have a process or a method in place that helps you to overcome any disappointments or failures you may have experienced as an official or a person?
Okay. Yeah, I think disappointment is inevitable in this business, whether you're in leadership or whether you're an official trying to climb the ladder. So the advice, I would say, take that disappointment and let it fuel your work ethic, the things that that you need to do to really enhance your skill, whatever it is. I got a heavy bag in my gym. I don't know about anybody else, but every time you take a swing at that, it helps release something that you're feeling. And I think, you know, whatever you're dealing with, there's stages of getting through it. And, you know, whether it's shame, grief, anger, acceptance, you know, there are stages and processes depending upon, you know, what type of thing it is. If it's not getting hired, you know, I wouldn't spend time on looking at those that did and making those comparisons. There's a quote, comparison is the thief of joy. You know, if you're looking at what somebody else gets and not taking a look in the mirror about the things that you can control, you know, you're going to be wasting your time. You don't know the dynamics related to what got them in hired and you not, but just focus on you. I think that's probably the best thing, figuring out what you can control, how you can change the dynamic, change the situation. And, you know, learning is a big piece of officiating. And I'm not talking about rules or mechanics, but, you know, just that self exploration, self-understanding, self-maturation. You know, a lot of us get into this at a younger age where maybe we're not as evolved as adult humans as we could or should be at that stage. And, you know, our coping mechanisms are different. You know, think about where you were in your 20s versus your 30s and so on and so forth. But we all evolve, or we all need to evolve, and hopefully we do. And I started officiating in my early 20s, and I was very shy, absolutely mortified to talk in public, not outgoing. I mean, all these things that would really surprise you knowing the Penny that you know these days. But for me, those were all real things. And, you know, I wouldn't go into a room and introduce myself. And, you know, it would scare me to be, even in this virtual environment, to talk to a group of people I didn't know. So, you know, whatever your path is, and for everybody, it's different. So I would just say work to evolve and worry about yourself and do the things that you have control over to make yourself the best qualified candidate for whatever opportunity it is.
That is an excellent response.
Right.
Yes, a great message. And it's a message that all of us can adhere to and apply continually to every day of our life, not just as officials, but in our day-to-day life also. And I really appreciate that. Okay, here's the end of the call. And so I'm going to ask Penny Davis if she has a question for the group.
Ooh, I was not prepared with a question for you all, but since I'm given the opportunity, I won't miss that. I would say, what is the most difficult thing about officiating in 2024 from each of your perspective? And if it's something that I can assist with, I will take that information and try and see what I can do to parlay a better result. So that's my question.
I have a question. I have my answer. I'm sorry.
I'd love to hear it. I'm taking notes.
Okay. The most difficult thing, and I'm so glad that there is an amendment made to the to one of the rules that will not only disqualify a player for one game, but also add a suspension to the next game, because as officials today, we're so disrespected by players, by fans, and sometimes coaches. And when you go out there with the mindset of the game is more important than you, it's more important than the coaches and the players. And you go out there with pride. You go out there with your head up and as a team player for your team, and also to try to be a good partner. But when you're so disrespected, it just takes the wind out of your sail. And we are held to a higher standard of professionalism when it comes down to, because the emotional part of us want to just defend ourselves. But the professional part, with everything in social media, people recording everywhere and everything, you have to maintain your composure when you just want to explode. And so I think that there should be a penalization also for fans, but players especially are coaches that are so disrespectful towards officials when we're trying to do our best job, but we held to perfection and we're not perfect. So that's my little spiel on that.
I appreciate that, Peggy. I really do. And I know that's part of the game. And I think, for us, it's, we know putting that shirt on, grabbing that whistle and putting it between our lips, like, we know that that's part of the game, and that there are different perspectives. And I think that the tools of finding ways to let that roll off your back and to ignore it, there is a fine line. But I love that the Rules Committee did adopt stricter policies if there is, the egregious act of disrespectfully contacting an official, that that there will be subsequent consequences, which, those didn't exist before. Like, you could punch an opponent and you would miss a game. But if you punched a referee, like, there was nothing tied to missing a game related to that. So they got that aligned, and it's meaningful. And I think it shows how much officials are valued in their role. The fact that they're willing to put that kind of penalty into that action. And it's overdue, but it's meaningful that it's been adopted now. Somebody
Great.
else.
Yeah, great response, Peggy. Someone else. Give us some
I
feedback.
have one.
Hi, Tanner. What do you got?
So it's, as a referee, we have other friends that are non-referees. We're still basketball fans. I feel like just public, they don't have the same kind of, something sort of similar to like the in-season training videos where we kind of explain, like, I would just use an example that UConn, the offensive foul at the end of the game last year. So many people just don't want that to be an offensive foul, but I mean, they're using the one angle. It's just like more of like a public, be more open to the public about. I mean, I don't think it was specifically a hard call for referees to see that the girl pushes right through, but like, do you get kind of what I'm saying? Just more of like a public.
I do, Tanner, and
Yeah.
I appreciate that, because the narrative that some of the media started to lay on that play about, oh, you can't make that call, then you let the players decide. It's like, well, fool, you want consistency. We called that screen all game long, and guess what? This is what consistency is. It's calling it the same way at the beginning of the game as the end of the game, and it was obvious. This isn't even one that's should be up for debate, but it was. And it did get shut down, but I would have loved to have had the opportunity, especially since we were right, to come forth and say, hey, you know what? Here's our opinion on this play. Here's what it is. And, go suck an egg. Like, this is just ridiculous that we're even talking about this. But, the negative side of that, some of the officials on that crew, their social media accounts were found and they received some messaging. And so, I think there's a point of responsible reporting that is also really important. And, maybe things going smoothly doesn't sell as many tickets or create as many viewers, but that was something that we did try to get behind, and to alter their narrative, but it didn't come with a public statement per se. So I feel for you, and I feel for that point specifically, and we actually do put out our training videos on YouTube. we call them fast break videos or something to that effect. So we are putting that same content out. Unfortunately, it doesn't get as many hits or looks as some of the things going on with players and some of the other dynamics. So, you know, there's a fine line between what draws interest and what puts eyeballs on the game versus, you know, us supporting and defending our officials. And, you know, I'm going to pound the table with my fist and be in support of our officials and say the things that need to be said as far as the job that we do, particularly when we do it well. And I'll stay on that. But I have some conversations with some of our media partners, and I remind them that we are human, and I remind them of all those things I just stated. So it's a work in progress, but you know, there's a unique situation with what goes on in the world and what happens on social media and the lack of control over accuracy there.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Great point.
Yep, great response, Tanner. Do we have another, before we wrap up, do we have another response for Penny to her question?
I would like to say something.
Sure, go
Hey,
ahead.
Penny, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Something real quick. I haven't been through it, but traveling. Maybe we can have like a forum of codes or just something that we can make easier for first timers who are traveling, or any hints or just insights from other people that maybe we don't have to call, or we can just go and read the insights.
Gotcha. So you're trying to find out all those hotel codes and
Yeah.
Mhm.
Or you know, flights.
Uh-huh.
Or just things that I'm not really sure about any of that, but and I'm just gonna be learning throughout. But yeah, forum or
Yeah, I think honestly that's really often geographical specific, and that's where, you know, leaning on your mentors, leaning on your colleagues, say, hey, look, I'm new at this. I'm not even going to pretend that I know. Can you help me, guide me, so, you know, I don't end up, you know, renting a $200 vehicle and trying to split it amongst my crew, and they're like, why was it $200? You know, it's those little things that that the veterans do know, and they're ever changing. So I think it's really tough for me in my position to necessarily say that, because the NCAA has relationships with different vendors. So if I'm all about, hey, you know, I would use national because you get free days, and I know these codes work, and you know, you're never asked for an ID, like that's gonna probably come off not positively for me in my role. But the veterans can tell you all that under the behind the curtains, and I think that's a safe space, and they're going to give you the best current information there.
Yep, I agree. And you know what's
Thank you.
interesting? What's
Welcome.
interesting, Penny, is that you know, officials all aspire to rise and to elevate and to grow and to work at higher levels. But in officiating, like any other industry, there are aspects of officiating that unfortunately you don't realize until you get into it. And
Mhm.
travel is a huge, huge part of it. And so, yes, I would highly advise to touch base with those that you trust, that you know, who can give you sage advice on how to manage your travel, because managing your travel can make or break at any point in your career. It can have an impact on the trajectory of your career also.
Totally. Now, and the bit about being organized, I used to have a Excel spreadsheet that had every day from November 1st to March 31st. And if I had a day off, then that line was blank. If I had a game, I'd have the game, the partners, who I was working for, what I was getting paid. I'd have a spot for my flight, for my rental car, and my hotel. If I didn't, and I'd highlight those spots. And so if it's highlighted in blank, that means I needed to do work to fill that in, whether it's booking a car, booking a flight. But then I'd track that, and that became a great tool for my accountant too, to have access to know, you know, how much was spent on each trip or in that category. And yeah, so being organized is huge. There's a lot of ways to do it, probably better ways than an Excel spreadsheet in today's modern world. But I would lean on somebody else who does it well and bend their ear about that stuff.
Hey, I agree, but hey, I'm an Excel spreadsheet user. I believe in them. I live and die with them. So yes, that's great advice. You know, hey, Penny, thank you so much for willing to spend your time and energy with our group on this Sunday. And I think it's been, once again, information and conversation has been invaluable. And also it's an indicator of your love and passion for what we do, being willing to give of your time and on a day that you could have been doing anything else with your Sunday.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. This is what I do, and it is meaningful to talk to people in different paths. It doesn't have to be all Division I. That's who I was. That was my my career path. I was Division III student athlete and started officiating right after college and worked my way up. So it's all a path and a journey that's very near and dear to me. So I'm happy to give them my time, but appreciate all of the attention and the nice accolades. But have a great season, everybody. It's going to be an amazing year. I've got a real strong feeling about that, and the game's in a great place. I trust that to be true with all that I've seen over the last couple of years in this position. And you know, we have work to do, but I know we got the best people out there being able to do it. But keep grinding and be safe.
Thank you, Penny. Really appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
And we will talk soon.
Sounds good. Take care, everybody.